Every dictator has his palaces, and Muammar Gaddafi is no exception.
For decades, Muammar Gaddafi ruled Libya with fear and extravagance.
Firefight appears to be over here in Bab al-Azizir. We're deep inside of Gaddafi's compound.
But beneath the surface, he built secret underground bunkers.
An enormous ammunitions depot for Gaddafi. 9 bunkers here, stacked full of tons and tons of weapon and ammunition.
When they were finally opened, what was hidden inside shocked the world. Gaddafi's rule of fear and wealth. After the Second World War, Libya came under the watchful influence of France and the United Kingdom. The British, in particular, championed the restoration of a monarchy, placing their confidence in the Senussi dynasty, which had ruled since Libya's independence in 1951. Under King Idris I, the nation became deeply entwined with Western interests, the monarch actively promoting British economic and military influence across the sprawling desert kingdom. Everything changed in 1952 with the discovery of oil. Libya, once one of the world's poorest nations, was suddenly transformed into a land of extraordinary wealth. Yet much of this fortune flowed to foreign petroleum companies, which controlled production, set prices, and claimed half of Libya's oil revenue. The monarchy further profited from hosting a United States airbase, cementing Western presence. This was the Libya in which a young Muammar Gaddafi came of age, a nation where immense wealth coexisted with widespread poverty, and foreign control sparked rising nationalist sentiment. As a teenager, Gaddafi absorbed the calls for Arab unity broadcast from Cairo. He listened intently to Gamal Abdel Nasser's voice of the Arabs, memorizing speeches denouncing imperialism and colonial interference. By 17, he was organizing demonstrations against colonial oppression, French atomic tests, and the assassination of Patrice Lumumba. Expelled from school, he continued his education in Misrata, assembling a circle of like-minded students committed to revolutionary ideals. In 1964, he joined the military academy, formed the Free Unionist Officers, and trained abroad in Beaconsfield and Britain's Sandhurst, honing his tactical skills and deepening his ambitions. By the late 1960s, dissatisfaction with King Idris was widespread. The monarchy's conservative policies alienated both the army and a growing middle class, who saw corruption and inequity permeate every corner of government. Despite the wealth flowing from oil, education, healthcare, housing, and social security lagged far behind, leaving most Libyans disconnected from their country's potential. In 1969, Gaddafi and his closest allies moved decisively to seize power. Their initial coup, scheduled for March 12th, was delayed after a concert by Egyptian singer Kulthum brought the political elite together, a spectacle Gaddafi could not allow to interfere with his plans. Weeks later, further delays ensured he would control key military units. Finally, on September 1st, while King Idris was abroad for medical treatment, the 27-year-old Gaddafi executed a bloodless coup. The monarchy fell, the Libyan Arab Republic was declared, and the crown prince was placed under house arrest. Power shifted without a single shot being fired. Once in control, Gaddafi acted swiftly to dismantle foreign dominance. The United States withdrew from Wheeler's Air Base, British arms contracts were cancelled, and the remaining Italian and Jewish residents, around 25,000 people, were expelled, their property seized. Foreign workers were replaced by Arab specialists, Western scripts were banned from publications, and banks were nationalized. By October, Libya had renegotiated its oil contracts, securing the majority of revenue and asserting full control over its resources. Gaddafi's Libya, now the great socialist People's Libyan Arab Jamahiriya, embarked on sweeping social reforms. Education, healthcare, housing, and subsidies for food and electricity were expanded, reshaping daily life for ordinary citizens. By 2011, literacy had reached 88%. Life expectancy had reached 74 years, and gender equality had advanced significantly. Yet bureaucratic inefficiencies meant these benefits were unevenly distributed, leaving gaps between policy and lived experience. Among his most ambitious projects was the Great Man-Made River, bringing water to arid regions and promising access to life's most essential resource for all Libyans. By 2009, Libya appeared on track to meet the UN Millennium Development Goals, and in 2010, the United Nations classified it as a high development nation in the Middle East and North Africa. Gaddafi skillfully navigated the country's intricate tribal landscape, building alliances and maintaining cohesion among diverse groups. Yet beneath the surface of progress lay a regime growing increasingly authoritarian. Opposition was ruthlessly suppressed. Academics, journalists, lawyers, and students were imprisoned, disappeared, or executed. Military mutinies and assassination attempts tested his control, prompting crackdowns that extended beyond Libya's borders. Revolutionary committees, loyal tribal members, and a paramilitary network ensured that orders were enforced, citizens were watched, and dissent was crushed. Amid a climate of fear and absolute control, whispers began circulating that Gaddafi had a labyrinth of tunnels and bunkers whose existence only came to light after his fall in 2011. The discovery of the underground bunkers. These were not mere shelters. They were fortresses built for a leader who trusted no one. Beneath Gaddafi's Bab al-Azizia compound in Tripoli lay an extensive network of tunnels and bunkers, meticulously designed as escape routes, command centers, and living quarters. Subterranean corridors connected every corner of the compound, serving as escape routes, command centers, and living quarters, allowing Gaddafi to move unseen and communicate in secrecy. For decades, the full scale of this underground network remained a mystery. When rebel forces advanced on Tripoli, NATO airstrikes shattered reinforced concrete, exposing the extraordinary depth of his preparations. Rooms bristling with weapons, gas masks, and supplies came into view, hinting at a world meticulously crafted for survival against both internal threats and foreign intervention. After the fall of Tripoli, investigators documented the tunnels in painstaking detail. Branching corridors revealed air-conditioned living quarters, storage areas, and bedrooms. One room, stripped of mattresses but still stocked with preserved food, suggested a hurried evacuation. Banks of telephones, communications panels, and even an operating theater pointed to a subterranean city designed to sustain Gaddafi and his closest aides indefinitely. Navigating these passages was perilous. Rebel fighters faced narrow corridors, potential booby traps, and sniper fire from loyalist holdouts. Some tunnels reportedly included roads capable of carrying vehicles tens of kilometers from the city, though their full extent remained unknown. The network resembled a vast underground metropolis, sprawling, intricate, and without a clear end. The origins of this hidden world traced back decades. By 1984, fearing threats from the West, Gaddafi ordered the construction of irrigation tunnels, a secret offshoot of the 15 billion euros Great Man-Made River project. Contractors worked under strict secrecy, reinforcing tunnels with steel and massive concrete sections, some weighing 75 tons and plunging 600 feet underground. These tunnels were multifunctional. Some enabled rapid troop movements, others held vast stockpiles of weapons and ammunition, while many contained sophisticated communication systems, allowing Gaddafi to monitor events and maintain control across the nation. In essence, the underground labyrinth served as the nerve center of Gaddafi's regime, meticulously outfitted for comfort. But even its luxury could not rival the extravagance he enjoyed above ground. The shocking luxury. While much of Libya struggled with poverty, Muammar Gaddafi's wealth was vast and intricately tied to the nation's oil reserves, which he controlled with near total authority. Estimates of his fortune vary, with some suggesting it may have reached as high as $200 billion, potentially making him one of the wealthiest individuals in modern history. Much of his fortune was hidden through a complex network of offshore accounts, shell companies, and international investments, with funds reportedly held in secret bank accounts in Dubai, Southeast Asia, and the Persian Gulf. The Libyan Investment Authority, or LIA, established to manage the country's sovereign wealth, became a key instrument of Gaddafi's financial strategy. By 2010, the LIA's portfolio was valued at roughly $56 billion, including holdings in major corporations such as Citigroup, AT&T, and General Electric. The LIA also invested in U.S. Treasury bonds and other instruments, often through intermediaries, effectively obscuring Gaddafi's personal ownership. Despite his public image as a revolutionary leader, Gaddafi's personal life was characterized by opulence and eccentricity. He amassed a collection of luxury items, including gold-plated firearms, high-end vehicles, and lavish residences. His wardrobe was extensive and carefully curated. He often changed outfits multiple times a day, favoring either traditional Libyan dress or military uniforms over Western suits. Gaddafi saw himself as a fashion icon, once declaring that whatever he wore would become a trend. His attention to appearance extended to travel. He frequently carried a bulletproof Bedouin-style tent, which he would set up in foreign capitals during state visits, maintaining both security and a symbol of status. He was also meticulous about his security, regularly altering his sleeping arrangements and even grounding all planes in Libya when he traveled by air. He generally shunned Western diplomats, whom he often viewed as spies, and approached foreign powers with confrontation and suspicion. Luxury extended beyond personal items. Among his possessions was a gold-plated Browning high-power pistol, emblematic of his flamboyance, later seized by rebels near Sirte in 11. He also owned custom-designed vehicles, including a Maybach 57S coupe, showing his preference for exclusivity and grandeur. His all-female bodyguard unit, the Amazonian Guard, formed in the early 1980s, was tasked with his protection. Trained in firearms and martial arts, the guards accompanied him on official trips and were prominently visible during public appearances. While presented as a symbol of empowerment, later accounts revealed abuses within the unit. Gaddafi's family similarly indulged in lavish lifestyles. His son, Muammar Gaddafi, was particularly notorious for extravagant spending, hosting private concerts by international stars and occupying entire hotel floors during trips abroad. These indulgences were funded by Libya's oil wealth, extending the family's influence and extravagance well beyond national borders. His investments were global. In London, Gaddafi owned properties in Hampstead and Knightsbridge, while in Italy, he acquired the Villa Magarini Graziani in Rome. These assets were often purchased through intermediaries to maintain secrecy. His influence also extended to development projects abroad. In Sudan, he financed the Corinthia Hotel in Khartoum, a five-star property constructed at a cost exceeding $80 million. In Tanzania, he funded the $5 million Gaddafi Mosque in Dodoma, completed in 2010, as part of his broader efforts to project ideological and cultural influence across Africa. Following his death, international efforts have sought to recover and repatriate Gaddafi's hidden assets. The Libyan Asset Recovery and Management Office has worked with foreign agencies to trace funds, though challenges remain, including legal complexities and the complicity of third-party nations that sheltered the dictator's wealth. Secret stashes were only the beginning. When Gaddafi's empire collapsed, the sheer scale of his possessions stunned the world. Weapons, documents, and secrets. The fall of Muammar Gaddafi's regime in 2011 did not merely topple a government. It unsealed a hidden world meticulously constructed over 4 decades. Behind the public facade of authoritarian rule was an intricate and terrifying network of military, intelligence, and punitive infrastructure designed to enforce absolute dominance. As rebels gained control of key cities, they systematically uncovered the full scope of Gaddafi's paranoia, extravagance, and brutality. The initial discoveries began in Benghazi. Rebels there uncovered a massive bomb-proof underground bunker complex near the port, a facility spanning 10 acres. From the outside, it appeared to be an ordinary military compound, but inside, it concealed a labyrinth of functions. The entrance was a narrow, debris-covered ramp fortified by a heavy steel-reinforced door. Inside, the atmosphere was suffocating, with thick cement columns supporting vast chambers where the only light came from narrow ducts high on the ceiling. These chambers were stacked wall-to-wall with crates of weapons and ammunition, Russian-made equipment from the 1970s and 1980s forming the bulk of the arsenal, alongside some Chinese weapons, including 107mm multiple rocket launchers. But the complex was far more than an arms depot. It was also a dedicated facility for suppression and terror. Down narrow corridors lined with heavy gray steel doors were tiny, 1-meter square cells. Each door was fitted with a foot-long bolt, sealing prisoners into suffocating spaces with no furniture, no running water, and only a single high hole for light. Detainees relied on a single bucket for sanitation. A man named Khalifa, imprisoned there for 2 weeks, recounted the brutal conditions, stating that even telling a joke about Gaddafi was enough to warrant incarceration. In a grim discovery, rebels found a pit beside a large bunker where over 40 prisoners had been thrown, some found alive, others dead. The brutality extended into a separate, villa-like building designed to mask its purpose. This was a detention center for young women. The courtyard was littered with syringes and intravenous tubes, remnants of drugs used to sedate captives. Discarded lingerie, handbags, makeup kits, and high-heeled shoes lay around the compound. Survivors and witnesses alleged that women were drugged, raped, and forced into making pornographic recordings for Gaddafi's men. The mattresses inside were torn and stained, silent witnesses to the abuse. Adding a layer of profound irony, rebels uncovered a hidden detention chamber concealed beneath a mosque located within the complex. Strategically, the bunker was a self-sustaining stronghold, a blast-proof tunnel connected to an enormous storage hall, large enough to span 2 football fields. Inside, rebels found rows of munitions, armored vehicles, trucks, and tanks, evidence that the site was prepared not just as a fortress, but as a functional war machine intended to sustain Gaddafi's grip on power, even as the city above him revolted. Similar scenes played out at the Qaddafi, another major military and administrative stronghold in Benghazi. Painted white and green, this sprawling complex was from which Gaddafi's regime managed both military operations and political control. Access had always been tightly restricted to his inner circle and mercenaries. Ordinary soldiers and citizens were forbidden. Colonel Mohammed Samir al-Abar, a tank commander who led the assault, recounted driving his tank through the outer wall, opening the way for soldiers and civilians armed with little more than rocks, swords, and Molotov cocktails. This imbalance was deliberate. Gaddafi had kept Libya's regular army weak, issuing little more than uniforms to ensure they posed no threat to his heavily armed special forces. After its fall, the Katiba transformed from a feared symbol into a grim tourist site. Citizens combed through its ruins, and soldiers organized the captured heavy weapons at places like the Salmani Maintenance Depot. Much of the equipment was outdated and required thorough stripping, scrubbing, and reassembling. Their commander reminded them to conserve ammunition, firing only a handful of test rounds, as supplies had to be preserved for the decisive battles ahead, particularly the fight for Tripoli. The rebels tested a range of devastating systems. They fired a Russian-made Dushka, a 12.7mm heavy machine gun first deployed in 1939, known for its ability to pierce armor and fire up to 600 rounds per minute, its thunderous sound startling bystanders. They also prepared a ZPU-1, a Soviet anti-aircraft gun that could be dismantled for transport, and a Shilka ZSU-23, a self-propelled anti-aircraft weapon. Rebel Adel Mustafa, a reserve soldier, pointed out the horrific impact of the large ammunition, explaining that such a bullet would tear a human body apart, and noted these weapons had been turned on civilians. When the National Transitional Council finally seized control of Tripoli and western Libya in late August 2011, one of its most urgent tasks was securing Gaddafi's vast, dispersed weapons depots. Human Rights Watch discovered that weeks later, many sites remained unguarded and were being looted with impunity. Peter Buchert, HRRW's Emergencies Director, described the situation as deeply troubling. Researchers visiting sites between September 6th and 9th found rampant theft of rockets, surface-to-air missiles, mines, and artillery shells. The regime had deliberately moved weapons from formal bases to shield them from NATO airstrikes, hiding them in private company warehouses, farms, and unfinished civilian buildings. One major concentration was near the base of the elite 32nd Camas Brigade, commanded by Gaddafi's son. At a farm compound, HRW found about 15,000 anti-personnel mines and 500 anti-vehicle mines. A nearby depot stored more than 100,000 mines alongside vast numbers of mortars, artillery shells, and tank rounds. Most alarmingly, an unfinished schoolbook printing facility housed a trove of heavy weaponry, surface-to-air missiles, anti-tank guided missiles, mortars, tank shells, and ammunition of multiple calibers. The looting was systematic and brazen. At the schoolbook site, an empty shipping container once held Sa-24 Grinch missiles, some of Russia's most advanced portable SAMS, capable of striking aircraft at 11,000 feet. Shipping documents dated December 2004 showed Russia had supplied Libya with 482 of these weapons, alongside older SA-7s and anti-tank missiles, all now gone. Buchert noted a pattern. SAMS were always among the first weapons to disappear from every looted site. An NTC commander openly admitted to HRW that he had been regularly collecting arms from the facility to deliver to rebel fronts, confirming the SAMS were present when he first arrived, but claiming ignorance as to who removed them. The irony was that these SAMS had no battlefield utility for the rebels, as pro-Gaddafi forces had no operational aircraft. Their disappearance raised grave international concerns that they could be used to target civilian aviation in a region plagued by militant groups. The discoveries extended beyond conventional arms. Inspectors from the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons were invited by Libya's new rulers to assess stockpiles. They confirmed international fears. Gaddafi had maintained undeclared chemical weapons. At the Ruvaga depot in the southeast, they found stores of sulfur mustard, a blistering agent, stockpiled as raw chemical material rather than loaded into munitions. They also examined artillery shells and confirmed that some were indeed chemical munitions that had never been declared, a clear violation of international law. Before the revolution, Gaddafi's government had destroyed about 54% of its declared sulfur mustard and 40% of its chemical precursors, but the process halted in February 2011. The new authorities were now obligated to submit a detailed plan for the destruction of the remaining stockpile. Gaddafi's ingenuity and concealment was further evidenced by the suspected use of the great man-made rivers infrastructure. NATO intelligence sources suggested the regime used the project's 15-foot-wide tunnels to conceal heavy weaponry and even rumored caches of gold bullion, creating a strategic dilemma for NATO as attacking them risked causing a humanitarian catastrophe and falling outside the UN mandate limited to protecting civilians. In Tripoli, the physical collapse of the regime was visible everywhere. The intelligence headquarters, once the domain of the feared Abdullah Senussi, was a burned and broken shell, guarded by a handful of rebel soldiers. Inside, the precision of NATO airstrikes was clear. Some buildings were concrete heaps. Others stood with glass blown out, but walls upright. The wreckage was a surreal mix of the mundane and the sinister. Boxes of papers from the Libyan Arabian Horse Breeders Society, a glossy catalog from a Belarusian weapons manufacturer, VHS tapes showing a MiG-29 fighter jet, and large satellite photographs of Libyan cities. Bags of shredded paper were piled in corners, mixed with food scraps and coffee cups, evidence of a hasty attempt to erase evidence. Yet not everything was destroyed. On one wall, a photo still hung of Gaddafi shaking hands with Nelson Mandela. The most damning discoveries, however, were the documents. In the office of former intelligence chief Musa Kusa, tens of thousands of archived files were found, revealing decades of secrecy and foreign complicity. They contained unmistakable records of cooperation between Libya's security services and Western intelligence agencies. The US CIA and UK M16 had sent terrorism suspects to Libya, despite its notorious torture record. Flight schedules, interrogation notes, and lists of questions filled the pages, showing that CIA agents had personally traveled to Libya to interrogate prisoners. The files detailed the rendition of individuals like Abdul Hakim Belhaj, who was detained with his pregnant wife in Malaysia in 2004 and secretly transported to Libya, where he was tortured and held in the infamous Abu Salim prison. The documents also exposed the hollow nature of diplomatic assurances, showing the US had requested written guarantees from Libya that detainees would be treated humanely. Guarantees that were meaningless given the regime's well-documented brutality. The intelligence files also revealed the regime's pervasive surveillance and infiltration. A top-secret document, briefed to Abdullah Senussi, revealed that Gaddafi had spies within the heart of the NTC. These agents provided maps of rebel weapon sites in the Western Mountains and the names of commanders chosen to lead assaults. The documents suggested rebel use of refugee camps along the borders set up by Qatar, the UAE, and Kuwait to smuggle in weapons and vehicles, with the tacit permission of the Tunisian Prime Minister. Most chillingly, one spy recommended assassinating specific NTC leaders to sow fear and disunity, and submitted a list of personal demands: a white BMW, a large amount of cash, and a satellite phone. The regime's reach extended into the highest levels of communication. Intercepted emails included one addressed to NTC leader Mahmoud Jibril and another from the Cypriot Foreign Ministry outlining a visit to Benghazi. Libyan embassies abroad were converted into listening posts, tasked with monitoring expatriates suspected of supporting the revolution. One report from the embassy in Malta listed names of Libyans who had met with opposition figures and recommended they be kidnapped. Despite the vast and sophisticated spy network Gaddafi built, it was powerless to save him in his final days. The final irony. In the wake of the Arab Spring uprisings in Tunisia and Egypt during late 2010 and early 2011, the Libyan government sought to preempt domestic unrest. Authorities attempted to quell discontent by lowering food prices, purging potentially disloyal officers from the military, and releasing several Islamist prisoners. Despite these measures, widespread dissatisfaction remained, fueled by corruption, entrenched patronage networks, and unemployment that had reached around 30%. On what became Libya's Day of Rage, protests erupted in cities across the country, challenging Gaddafi's long-standing rule. Unlike the neighboring revolutions, Libya lacked a strong Islamist movement, but public anger was widespread and secular, directed at an increasingly authoritarian regime. Gaddafi responded with fierce rhetoric, denouncing the demonstrators as drugged and linked to al-Qaeda, and declaring that he would die a martyr rather than abandon Libya. He vowed that the rebels would be hunted down street by street, house by house, and wardrobe by wardrobe. Soon, the army opened fire on protesters in Benghazi, killing hundreds and prompting shock and defections among senior politicians, some of whom joined the uprising. The rebellion quickly spread throughout Libya's less developed eastern provinces. By the end of February, cities including Benghazi, Misrata, al-Baida, and Tobruk were under rebel control, and the Benghazi-based National Transitional Council emerged as their political representative. What began as protests soon escalated into a full-scale insurgency, later known as the First Libyan Civil War. In the early months, Gaddafi's government appeared to hold the upper hand. Armed with superior firepower, the regime launched brutal counterattacks, disregarding international law. Both sides committed human rights abuses, including arbitrary arrests, torture, extrajudicial executions, and revenge killings. On February 26, 2011, the United Nations Security Council responded with Resolution 1970, suspending Libya from the UN Human Rights Council, imposing sanctions, and calling for an international criminal court investigation into the killings of civilians. In March, the Security Council established a no-fly zone to protect civilians from aerial attacks, explicitly prohibiting foreign occupation. Nonetheless, several nations intervened militarily. Qatar deployed hundreds of troops to support rebel forces, while France and the United Arab Emirates provided weapons, training, and logistical support to the NTC. NATO also announced its commitment to enforce the no-fly zone. On April 30th, a NATO airstrike in Tripoli took out Gaddafi's sixth son and 3 of his grandsons, marking a significant escalation in international involvement. The Western military intervention drew criticism from governments that had previously condemned Gaddafi's domestic repression, framing it instead as an imperialist effort to secure Libya's strategic resources. In June 2011, the International Criminal Court issued arrest warrants for Muammar Gaddafi, his son Saif al-Islam, and his brother-in-law Abdullah Senussi, the head of state security, charging them with crimes against humanity. That same month, Amnesty International released a report detailing war crimes committed by Gaddafi's forces, while noting that several allegations of human rights abuses lacked credible evidence. The report also highlighted the uneven media coverage, observing that much Western media coverage has, from the outset, presented a very one-sided view of the logic of events, portraying the protest movement as entirely peaceful and repeatedly suggesting that the regime's security forces were unaccountably massacring unarmed demonstrators. By July, more than 30 governments had formally recognized the National Transitional Council as Libya's legitimate authority. Gaddafi dismissed these endorsements with defiance, calling on his supporters to trample on those recognitions Trample on them under your feet. They are worthless. The following month, the Arab League joined in, officially recognizing the NTC as the legitimate representative of the Libyan state. With NATO providing air cover, rebel militias advanced steadily westward, defeating loyalist forces and securing control of central Libya. The NTC also gained the support of Amazigh communities in the Nafusa Mountains, long marginalized under Gaddafi's rule for their non-Arabic heritage. This alliance allowed the rebels to encircle loyalist strongholds across western Libya. By August, key cities including Zlatan and the capital, Tripoli, had fallen, effectively dismantling the remaining structures of Gaddafi's regime. Analysts later suggested that without NATO air support, the rebels might not have sustained their advance, and Gaddafi's forces could have regained control of eastern Libya. After the collapse of Tripoli, only a handful of towns in western Libya, Bani Walid, Sebha, and Sirte, remained under Gaddafi loyalist control. Reports indicated that Gaddafi considered linking up with Tuareg forces led by his Sebha commander Ali Kana and seeking asylum in Burkina Faso. Instead, he returned to his hometown of Sirte, where he convened a final strategy meeting with his son Mutassim and intelligence chief Abdullah Senussi. It was during this time that he learned of his youngest son Khamis's death in a NATO airstrike on August 29th. In the weeks that followed, Gaddafi continued to issue defiant audio messages via the Syria-based Arai TV, maintaining his presence in the media despite the regime's collapse. On September 10th, General Massoud Abdel Hafiz declared the formation of the Republic of Fezzan in Seba, with Gaddafi named president for life. Yet the remaining loyalist stronghold fell quickly. Sebha was captured by rebel forces on September 22nd, marking the near-complete end of Gaddafi's control over Libya. As Gaddafi's world collapsed around him, he moved with a small entourage that included his son Mutassim, Security Chief Mansour Dao, and Defense Minister Abu Bakr Yunus Jabr. Constantly shifting residences to evade NATO strikes and advancing NTC forces, Gaddafi devoted his time to prayer and reading the Quran, maintaining a ritual of reflection amid the chaos. On October 20th, 2011, he recorded a final audio message for his family, later publicized by Al-Hadath, before attempting a breakout from Sirte's District 2nd in a joint civilian-military convoy. According to Dao, it was a suicide mission, with Gaddafi intending to lose his life in the Jaref Valley near his birthplace. Around 8:30, NATO bombers struck the convoy, destroying at least 14 vehicles and killing more than 50 people. The convoy scattered under heavy fire, and Gaddafi, along with his closest aides, sought shelter in a nearby villa that was soon shelled by rebel militias from Misrata. Fleeing further, Gaddafi and his inner circle hid inside drainage pipes while his bodyguards engaged the rebels. During the skirmish, Gaddafi sustained severe head injuries from a grenade blast, and Jabr was killed. When the Misrata militia captured Gaddafi, he was seriously injured during the apprehension. A confrontation filmed on a mobile phone. One video shows him being prodded or stabbed with a stick, knife, or bayonet. He was later dragged onto the front of a pickup truck, falling off as it moved. Semi-naked, his body was placed into an ambulance and transported to Misrata, where he was found dead. Official NTC accounts stated that he was caught in crossfire and succumbed to bullet wounds, while other eyewitnesses suggested he was shot in the stomach. That afternoon, NTC Prime Minister Mahmoud Jibril announced Gaddafi's death publicly. His body was stored in a freezer at a local market, alongside the corpses of Yunus Jabr and Mutassim, displayed for 4 days, drawing Libyans from across the country to witness the shocking fall of the once mighty. Footage of Muammar Gaddafi's final moments spread rapidly across international media, capturing the chaotic end of a man who had ruled Libya for more than 4 decades. In response to mounting calls for accountability, Interim Prime Minister Mahmoud Jibril announced on October 24th that a commission would investigate the circumstances of Gaddafi's death. The following day, the NTC confirmed that his remains had been buried in an undisclosed desert location. Thanks for watching. See you in our next video.